I could do it with a haircut. Look, my hair's all over the place. But because of this lockdown, yeah, okay, I mean, restrictions have been uplifted slightly. There's still no salons and my hair's all over the place. It's hot as well, you know. So having long hair is uncomfortable. Anyway, this is a video response to my friend James Basco, who did a video response to one of my videos. If you haven't seen them, I will post them in the description box below. I'm also fasting as well, so I'm feeling a bit lightheaded, and when you fast as well, you do lose a lot more water than usual, so you get more dehydrated, hence drinking the water. So yeah, my friend James Basco, he did a video response. If you don't know who James Basco is, he's from Burnley in Lancashire in England, but he lives in London, and he's a counsellor, a DJ, and a YouTuber. So he has 2 YouTube accounts. I will post them in the description box below as well. And that's it. He did a video response to my video about how COVID-19 is affecting people with mental health. And he said a few things, right? Because because I took notes, and one of the things he said, and I think I said this too, but it was ages ago, but one of the things he said was that isolation is not good for depression, and that is true, because when people become depressed, they don't want to go out because of their depression, and they then start to think their own thoughts, believe their own thoughts, and their own thoughts can play tricks on them, and unfortunately depression is a high risk for suicide. And so what he was saying, and if this is true, right? People who have a depression, the best thing for them is to get out and do things, especially doing things that help other people, such as doing voluntary work in a charity shop or in a pet store somewhere, right? Etc. Because then when you do things to help other people, then you feel better as well, because one, you know you're doing something good, and 2, you know that it's taking the focus off your own problems. But unfortunately, since this lockdown has come into place, people haven't been able to go out. People have been told to stay indoors. And even though that may sound good on paper, because we have been told to stay indoors simply because of a virus, that is only slightly more deadlier than influenza. People are not coping, and people are committing suicide because they can't cope being on their own, because they start listening to their own thoughts. And what happens then, when the depression then takes over, you find it hard to step outside and see people, right? You find it hard to step outside and meet people because, well, because you're depressed, you have a low self-esteem, and that's what happened, right? So that's why you don't want to see people. Another thing as well that he said, and I said something about this as well, is other people who haven't been coping with this lockdown are people who are extroverts, because extroverts get their energy and they get their pleasure from being out all the time and mixing with loads of people. But because they've been stuck indoors, they can't cope either. They become depressed, they fall into despair, and hence, unfortunately, suicide. There was one tragic incident of, I've said this before in that video that I did, and I'll say here again briefly. There was a 19-year-old woman from King's Lynn in Norfolk, in the east of England, and she was an extrovert. She couldn't cope being stuck indoors. She attempted suicide. I say attempted because she survived at the time, but unfortunately she died. She succumbed to her wounds in hospital. I'll put that article again, if I can find it, in the description box below. If I can't find it, I'll post a video I did that I talked about mental health, and I'll post that video in the description box below, because then you'll find the article, because the article is on that video in that description box. Hope that makes sense. Yeah. Another thing that he said as well was, and I do find, and what he said here is true, right, about social media, because I've seen his video quite a few times, and what he said has reminded me of something. Before this lockdown, right, I didn't bother with Twitter. I didn't bother with Facebook. Why? Because I was doing a lot of things at the time before the lockdown. I was in 2 choirs. I was going over to a friend's house every Monday evening doing podcasts, and I was doing volunteering work in a charity shop 3 days a week. And then on my free days, then, instead of being stuck in a house burning my eyes out on a computer screen, I was out and about, like just going for coffee somewhere, or having a drink in the local pub, or just hanging about town, yeah, just basically getting out and doing things. However, since the lockdown, I've come to realise that the only way that I can communicate is to go back onto social media. So I went onto Twitter, but I found out there isn't much action happening on Twitter, so I went on the Facebook. And the reason why I joined Facebook was the choir that I am in, the Phoenix Choir of Wales. Well, they are doing a practice on Zoom every Wednesday and Sunday. So because of the lockdown, because we couldn't have quiet practice in person, they were doing it over the internet, and me being in the choir, I was pissing out, and so that's when I decided to go back on the Facebook. That was the original intention, but since I've been on Facebook, I've reconnected with old friends. I've made new friends on there, and I had a very interesting experience that turned out to be a romance scam. So as you can see, being on Facebook hasn't been a dull moment whatsoever. So yeah, so and I've also I've met a pastor from Kenya, and we've been having video chats on there as well, and me being a Christian also, hence the crosses. I've also been slightly spreading the gospel. I say slightly because it's not as if I'm preaching or ramming down people's throats who are heathens, but yeah, you know what I mean. So yeah, so for all of those who are stuck in a lockdown, this is where social media has helped. I can't think of anything else to say. That's all I had to say. But yeah, please subscribe to this channel. Also as well, please subscribe to James Basco, and to both of us, please don't hesitate to hit our like buttons. Please don't hesitate to spread our videos, and please don't hesitate to watch these videos over and over again. Yeah, so anyway, that's all I have to say, and God bless to all of you in Jesus' name. Amen.